Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest in the series of Manufacturing Management live panel events. I'm Chris Beck, the editor of Manufacturing Management. One of the few positives to have come out of the past few weeks during the pandemic is the collaboration of the manufacturing industry to meet urgent challenges. And a prime example of this is the VentilatorChallengeUK, a consortium of over 30 leading manufacturers, all of which responded to Boris Johnson's call for an urgent need for ventilators back in mid-March. And it saw companies from all areas of industry come together in a way never really seen before to rapidly design, develop and produce urgently needed medical equipment. Medical approval was granted for large-scale production of a Penlon device within around a month of the initial plea. The shift is now turned, as well we know, to PPE, and again industry is stepping up to the plate. But can this newfound spirit of sharing remain as the world starts to get back to some sort of normality? And to discuss that, I'm delighted to be joined by three members of the Ventilator Challenge Consortium: Mark Howard, Head of R&T Business Development at Airbus, Brian Holliday, Managing Director of Digital Industries at Siemens, and Peter Bruch, Managing Director of AE Aerospace. Also with us is Stephen Phipson, Chief Executive of Make UK, the manufacturers organisation. Thank you all for joining me today. Brian, if we turn to you first, Siemens has obviously played quite a large role in the Ventilator Challenge in recent weeks, but it's involved working with companies that you maybe wouldn't have done in the past. How have you found that experience?
Well, Siemens played a role, and I really have to just say up front, it's genuinely been a collaboration with a huge number of companies. So I don't want to overstate our role. I mean, to be specific, we've worked with Airbus, particularly around two of the sub-assemblies for the Penlon ventilator. But I just want to give credit to everyone who stepped up. And I think, in that sense, we've seen a sort of meritocracy, develop that people just companies brought what they could to this to move it forwards. So no, just genuinely delighted to have been engaged in it and to collaborate with other contributors.
Sure, yeah. Mark, what's Airbus's experience been of the consortium?
So, I mean, it's been an incredibly positive experience. Brian alluded to, Brian shouldn't underplay their role as well, because we've had a very, very close relationship in establishing many production lines up in our facility up in Broughton. But ultimately, I think what I've seen is a real sort of sense of trust and empowerment amongst the organisation in the Penlon consortium, which we're engaged with. I can see a lot of very professional people coming together and actually working in a very professional way. There's no egos in there. Basically, everyone steps up to the challenge of how do we deliver this common objective to deliver thousands of ventilators for the NHS to combat the pandemic. And it's just been a really sort of enlightening experience as well, because the speed at which we've acted is just phenomenal. When you look at the number of sites we've put facilities in as a consortium, be that Ford, be that Airbus, be that Penlon, or be that STI, and McLaren, of course. The speed of operation has been phenomenal, and the culture that we've created as a consequence of having that one objective, I think, has been one of just a willingness to succeed and get to an end goal.
Stephen, how's industry as a whole? Obviously, you speak to government and other kind of industry leaders and business leaders from across the country. How have they viewed the work that's been done by the Ventilator Challenge?
Well, because it's echoing other thoughts. It's remarkable, really, just to see how quickly people responded. I mean, we were looking at the complete scene and working closely with Cabinet Office, who were managing the process. Of course, we've got the large consortium and the role that people like Airbus and Siemens and AE have played in this. But really, we had responses directly involved in building up the supply chain for this from 350 companies. We worked closely with BASE to get people registered on the website. And the remarkable thing was the speed of the response. Everyone really willing to change their capacity, change their manufacturing into anything that could support the national effort. And it was a really good collaboration. That's the point that's been brought out before. But I was just really struck by just how willing and responsive companies were to this. And it really is helping us a lot actually in terms of government. I think certainly on the Prime Minister's calls recently, he's now reflected on how important the manufacturing sector is, because in crises like this, just seeing the response we've had nationally is a really important thing. And of course, it carries on into future challenges, which of course is the subject that you wanted to bring out today, I think, Chris.
Absolutely, yeah. And right,
I was in Stephen's office on the March the 16th, I think. We had the benefit of hearing the Prime Minister together with the initial rallying call, and it was really quite helpful, wasn't it? And I've heard many people involved in this refer to it as almost a warlike effort that I think gave us that very clear purpose from the start to get us going. And if we can find an element of that in the future, that's certainly going to help, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's this common objective, Brian, isn't it, that really galvanised everyone's spirit and response to this, I think. Everyone was clear on what the objective was, I think. That was the point.
And like you say, Stephen, the speed with which everyone has kind of come together is really, unprecedented. Peter, your organisation is in the aerospace supply chain, and obviously you work with major OEMs in that sector. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, especially as we've got Airbus on the call, but that sector's often guilty of being somewhat secretive and keeping their cards quite rightly quite close to their chest. I know in the past you've been quite vocal about encouraging more collaboration amongst aerospace companies, whether that's OEMs or further down the supply chain. What would be your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I ought to apologise to Mark for the poster that's behind me. But I realised I've swapped it out because Airbus take a lot of our product, not directly but indirectly through our customers. So apologies for that, Mark. We'll airbrush it out later. I would really wanted to talk about the ventilator challenge as well. I can do afterwards because we were at the sharp end, as it were. We're just a small SME based in Birmingham, and the one thing that we see is that when we can collaborate with our customers, i.e. get involved right at the beginning, as in what is the product, what does it need to do, and so on, we can advise on design for manufacture and design for assembly and things like that can cut a lot of time and cost out of the product. And what we found is where we're able to do that with customers, it's made everybody's life so much easier, so much less adversarial. So we tend to say, you know who your suppliers are, you know who your good ones and maybe not so good ones, but you also know who the washer makers are, who the nut makers are, and who the bolt makers are. So don't ask a bolt maker to make a washer and vice versa. Go to them and then work with them with their specialities. And hopefully between us, we can make a better product and better cost effectiveness for the industry as a whole.
I mean, Mark, you're directly dealing with companies like AE Aerospace. How do you work with your supply chain and kind of collaborate and make sure that the skills are and their knowledge is what you need?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite clear from our even starting at our research and technology phase, as well as in our research and development type phases for products. We always work very closely with our supply chain, and maybe not necessarily as we go further down the tiers, yeah. But clearly, our tier ones are a very, very close relationship. I think if we even look at our current research and technology portfolio, we very much closely engage our partners who potentially could be future suppliers, yeah. And our intention there is to actually make sure that, you know, we are clearly signalling our direction we're taking and what we actually will need in the future. If I can come back to the ventilator challenge though, because I mean, I think one of the key things that I guess, you know, we've seen, particularly in close working with Siemens, is the use of digital tools in the space of speed and collaboration as well. Because what we have seen is that use of the Siemens tool set, when they actually helped us. In fact, they designed the shop floor for us, yeah, and designed the interconnectivity for us. And we saw that, you know, the skills there were absolutely sort of top notch. We thought that they had the best solution for us. Again, no egos. We'll work with as a partner with Siemens to actually adopt that technology. And we've seen the technology, it really does help deliver speed. And you know, it was designed as a digital twin with Brian's team. And ultimately what we've implemented is an exact replica. So I think, so from a collaboration perspective, for me, digital also will help drive the future as a real key enabler for that closer collaboration.
I think it would be unfair for Mark and his business to be expected to come down to the level of us in the second or third tier. So it's very much a case of how they're already working with their suppliers and then how they then work down to us. Because it should be fairly simple. Airbus have got a rate per month. Okay, it's changing somewhat at the moment, but in normal terms, we know what it is. So it should, in theory, be able to rattle down to us at the lower levels as to what we need to make per month to support that. Unfortunately, systems and computers seem to the ventilator challenge. We registered on the government's website, as Stephen mentioned earlier, but we were also asked by Rolls-Royce through their supply chain. So we were called, I think it was we had an email about 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon where most people had already headed home, and the rest of us weren't far off. And we would sort of sent some drawings and said, in the next hour, can you come on a conference call and can we discuss these? Can you make them? So it was split into 2 things. One was the Smith's Parapack, which is obviously an existing design. But what we were also asked to do was prototyping for a new valve. And basically that call we were on with another 7 or 8 of our competitors, but also friendly companies that we work with as well. And it was very much a case of, well, who can do what by when, who's best suited to which of these components, and how do we move forward? And within an hour or so, we'd split it down into who was doing what. In several cases, it was 2 of us were doing the same part, so that it wasn't an easy part. So if one of us didn't succeed, the other one would achieve. And basically by the Monday morning, we had prototype parts complete at Rolls Control Systems, ready to be assembled. And we were talking to each other over the course of the weekend, and it was well, incredible the way that everybody worked together. That we've got a problem with this, how did you fix that? This drawing's not correct, what have you done? To get the results through. And we were able to achieve that, and it was a phenomenal result.
I think Peter's point is one that, you know, could be. There are multiple stories actually from across this whole consortium, and I know Rosa Wilkinson is you know, looking to try and help consolidate some of those inputs, because so much happened at very short notice. And I think to Mark's point, the digital tools just really helped. It enabled collaboration. I mean, can you imagine getting, you know, 20 people from 10 different companies together for a daily meeting at 7 o'clock without, you know, that wouldn't have been the normal before. But I think, you know, tools like Zoom, like teams, which we've made good use of, have got people together. HoloLens has been able to connect people remotely, but also just being able to take digitized drawings and share them, share ideas, has been able to enable people to come in very quickly and say yes to things like machining, fixture aid. I've seen that sort of collaboration both inside our company and out. But I think this sort of acceleration of digitalization, it's been a really good learning experience for all of us. Everyone's learnt things because people have brought their A games and their knowledge and experience, and we've all had our eyes opened, to the insights from people in other sectors with other manufacturing challenges. And the Congleton team, I have to give credit to Andrew Peters and the Congleton team that worked with Martin Bolton and the Airbus team at Broughton to design the absorber and flow meter lines. The initial design took the conventional wisdom that we'd started with and enabled us to optimize, to create a line that had social distancing. That's new, 2 meter envelopes around operators. It had to adhere to a regulator that neither Airbus nor Siemens Digital Industries were used to working with, the MHRA, and the steps that were needed to conform to Pendon's design. But also then it needed a dose of optimization for a footprint that was always going to be limited. And it's interesting that using digital tools helped that team turn around, with Airbus in just 48 hours, a design that then meant that we could move forward with something that we could visualize and easily say yes to, because it gave us the confidence with a simulation, a virtualization of the factory, and a simulation to test the assumptions. But I can't imagine before this saying that would be reasonable. Can you just turn around a factory design in 48 hours? So really, I think it's been a combination of skills and tools and collaboration and clear purpose, if I were to wrap those things up for all of the companies. And honestly, Peter, I think your example is we're going to find out these are replicated many times over in the consortium.
That kind of agility and that speed, turning things around in 48 hours, it's the kind of thing that SMEs are always seen as the agile ones, and the larger companies like Airbus and Siemens take weeks and weeks, if not months, to, no offense, stereotypically, stereotypically they're always seen as the ones that aren't quite as quick to react. But this has gone to show that even the biggest companies in the sector can turn things around quickly if they need to, if people come together and share ideas.
Well, on the Smiths Parapack part that we were making, it was a complex mill-turned part, and unfortunately we didn't have, well, not even the knowledge that Siemens were there to help or to do anything. So we had to Kaizen and review as we were going through. So we started off with maybe making a few dozen a day. By the time we got to the end of it, with the flow lines that we'd put in place, the visual management, the Kaizen events, we had no ability to visualize anything. We just had to put it down on paper and make it happen. But by the time we got to the end of it, we were making close to 1,000 a day of these parts. And for us, that's kind of 6 weeks production normally of stuff that we make every week, every year. So to go from nothing to that level, it galvanized our entire team, and everybody was able to then start putting in ideas and seeing the immediate effect, benefit or otherwise, of those ideas, and we could change stuff. And we're just launching on SC21 C&G, which is Competitiveness and Growth, which is an ADS and government-based funded program. And we were the first company to be approved by BASE, sorry, put that in. And all of that is how we're going to improve our business as a whole. But the guys on the shop floor were able to actually get this experience very, very rapidly, and the benefits from it. So it was a phenomenal few weeks.
Stephen, I mean, we've spoken in the past about the excellent work of SMEs in the sector, and Peter here is a shining example of that. And as Brian said, there'll be plenty more stories like that from the consortium, and even those companies that aren't in the consortium that have lent their hand to helping. What will be your message to companies like AE Aerospace and the other SMEs out there that are stepping up?
Well, first of all, you're quite right, Chris. We've got hundreds of stories like that. I mean, it's a really good reaction to it. I think we do need to capture quite clearly the learning from the digital technology, the points that Brian made earlier about that. And part of our role will be to make sure as many SMEs as possible understand that that was a big contributing factor to getting things moving quickly, and how that can contribute to their business. Because as you know, one of our challenges, and something we're really keen on, is promoting the digital technologies to as many SMEs as possible around the country. And we've got to touch nearly 300,000 businesses in the sector to be able to facilitate that. So there's a great piece of learning from this experience on digitization that we need to use. And I know Rosa's capturing some of that from the catapults, and we should use that material to try to promote this much more aggressively in many respects to many companies, showing the benefits of doing that. But it's moving on from this now. We're now having a similar experience of collaborative working on the challenges around PPE and safety equipment. And it's not just gowns and masks, there's a whole raft of things that are required. And we've got many manufacturers at the moment, again, doing the same thing. Slightly smaller scale, not so complex systems as we had around the ventilator challenge, but nevertheless, many companies converting their capacity to be able to make the right sort of PPE that's required for the health service. And again, people that aren't normally at all involved in things like medical accreditation processes and those sorts of things. And the speed of collaboration there is not just between companies, but also between authorities and companies to get those processes streamlined and get that product quickly to the front line. So we're seeing the same spirit again replicated in that challenge. And what we're really hoping is that we can hold on to that for future challenges. And there's a number of them coming up as well, which government's starting to talk about. Other things that we can do as a nation to address these challenges collaboratively. But we should underline, and we should keep this theme of using digital tools, because this is a great push to make sure that everyone's aware that actually, if we could get it down to the level 3 and level 4 tiers, as well as having it at the top end of the supply chain, we can make a big difference to productivity and efficiency in getting many of these new products through the system as quickly as possible. But yeah, I mean, there's been some challenges, but I think the SMEs have responded remarkably well. And as you say, very agile. I mean, some of the stories we're seeing are pretty, heart-rendering stories in many respects about the way their whole workforce has worked 24 hours a day, as we heard from Peter before, about really stepping up to this challenge. And it's all part of a community spirit there to be able to deliver exactly what the government wants in terms of these challenges. So something to really hold on to. It shows the strength of innovation in UK manufacturing, shows the agility we've got in our supply base, and it's a really good testament to UK manufacturing in many respects. We should be celebrating that, which is why I'm very happy we're doing this webcast to try to promote this more widely amongst all these SMEs that are out there.
Absolutely, yeah. Do you think that, it's a question for whoever wants to take it really, do you think the newfound spirit of collaboration and agility and being open is here to stay? Is it something that you know, the three manufacturers in the room, is that something that you can see continuing once this is all over?
Maybe I'll start. I mean, I think the answer is an obvious yes. I mean, I think what we've learned is that, with a little bit more openness, with that collaborative mindset, we can move much quicker, and speed actually counts a lot. It will help us get out of this crisis as well afterwards. So I think in my opinion, and I think in many of my colleagues' opinions, I think it should be here to stay. We need to make it stick. We need to take the lessons learned from this exercise and really start to embed them back into our organisation. And we've had some really good people in our team embedded. We've seen some really good people with our partners. If you get the right people together, you can absolutely move mountains.
Perhaps I can just build on that as well. I mean, Mark, you've been working closely with Ali Burns on the central exec for this, and you guys have worked so closely but had never met. The whole team hadn't met face to face even, which perhaps is unusual in itself. But I know Alistair's talked about developing such a strength of relationship with you guys that he feels that's going to be lifelong. These things make a difference, don't they? People involved together in this consortium challenge will naturally connect more in the future. But I wondered if I could also make Mark smile by just pointing out that we've also seen the sort of the engagement, the empowerment, the excitement that's possible through working on this, really replicated through a hackathon challenge that we gave to some of our apprentices and graduates on the back of this very recently, just last week. And would you believe it? We gave them just a couple of days with a complex manufacturing calibration challenge to see if they could help. One or two doubters, but Mark, they absolutely did it, didn't they? They came back almost apologetic that it had taken them a whole 4 days to design a mechanical fixture that reduced a calibration time that was occasionally at 40 minutes down to just 2. And not only did they solve that, but they went off and found a way to automate it further with a small control system and a little operator panel and so on. And so to me, those same things that we need to carry into the future in leadership of just engaging people around the common problem, empowering them, not getting in their way, setting out the problem and doing what we can to support, but then creating a sense of celebration or excitement about the outcome. That I've seen that in the consortium. It was definitely the case in the hackathon, which was a real shot in the arm. I hope you'd agree, Mark. Just inspirational to see. From these young contributors. But yeah, that excitement and celebrating the outcomes a bit more. I would say these are all things that we can do more of in the future.
Yeah, and I can only concur, Brian. I mean, the hackathon was superb. The young people, their engagement, their drive, and actually what they delivered was actually what's absolutely needed for the production line. And it was clear at the end of that, they felt really sort of buoyed up by the fact that they actually spent 4 days, delivered something which is absolutely necessary, which we're now demanding and pulling on them. And even better, as you said, they came up with an add-on next step, how to automate it, how to speed things up. And I think if we can embed some of that kind of culture, well, I guess what we're seeing is that culture is being flowed through the entire organisation, or through the entire consortium, and now into those young people. And it was just superb. Yeah, it was absolutely just superb. And I think the guys really are looking forward to actually applying this on the line in the coming days, and it's days rather than weeks. Yeah.
Yes.
To echo what Mark and Brian have just said, what our youngest apprentice, as it happens, was given a starring spot by the Ventilator Challenge tweeting and out, and it was he was identified, and his picture went out as one of the stars of the show, as it were, and that really boosted him. But it also boosted the team around him as well, because they were the ones training him and taking him forward. To answer the collaboration thing, it's very interesting actually. I think almost incidental to this, we've been approached by a couple of our major customers, big blue chips that you would know, because they're struggling to ask, or they feel that they're not asking the right questions to get the answers that they need from their subcontractors, i.e. people like us, so they can buy the right products, right price, etc., etc., etc. So we're going in and going in remotely, of course. We're helping them to ask the questions in a manner that we would understand and be able to give them the best answer, and explain to them how those questions relate to what they're trying to ask in the first place. Sorry, that's a complex way of explaining it. But they're now understanding that, oh, actually what we're asking might not be the best way to ask it. And okay, we hope there's going to be a benefit for us, but there should be a benefit for the customer with other suppliers as well, to get that collaboration going and moving forward.
I think the point on the apprentices is quite an important point to keep hold of as well, because obviously, as you know, we run one of the large national apprentice training centres with about 2,000 engineering apprentices up there in Birmingham. One of the challenges is, of course, encouraging youngsters into the sector. And we sort of find ourselves in competition very often with university courses, etc., rather than people coming in to do the badly needed apprenticeships that we need in manufacturing, and capturing some of these examples, capturing some of these inspiring stories about how exciting this sector is and how high tech it is and how they can contribute to something that's so important, is again something else that we need to use going forwards in our campaigns in encouraging youngsters to come into manufacturing and engineering going forward. So that will be an additional benefit from this whole aspect of working together under these national challenges, I think.
Well, Billy, who I just mentioned, Billy, who I just mentioned, he's actually at Make UK Centre in Aston. And we also did an employer day there. We were by far and away the smallest company there, but we did an employer day for the apprentices. And we were blown away by the quality of the young people coming through.
Incredible.
So we went for 2. We thought, well, we'll hire 3 just to be on the safe side. And we've got 5 starting at the beginning of July. All of them are going to the Make UK Aston facility. It's just incredible, the abilities, the enthusiasm.
It's inspiring, isn't it? It's absolutely inspiring. If we could bottle that and then go out there to the schools and show the youngsters what this is like, it's a very
phenomenal.
Yeah, it is.
We also support the IMECE young members. We sponsor their annual dinner and things like that. And it's scary. It's phenomenal to go along and talk to these youngsters, and yeah, the skills, ability, and so on. It's out there. We've just got to harness it and get it into our businesses.
So,
I wondered if perhaps I could just comment that I think to Stephen's point, I do hope we get to tell some of these stories, and that the people that have delivered these outcomes get to tell them themselves. But for any younger viewers watching this as well, perhaps I could share with you that the thing that really gave me a boost, having seen the output of this hackathon, was knowing or finding out that 2 of the team felt that this was the best thing they'd done in their lives. It had given that much of, given them that much of a lift, working together as a small team, solving problems, using digital tools, and knowing that it had purpose. And yeah, as you say, Stephen, if we can find a way to capture some of that from some of those contributors and others on the consortium challenge, and all of the firms in the supply chains that have turned things around rapidly. I mean, often, invoicing us with a big fat 0 as a result as well of things that they've been doing. But I know that there are, younger and experienced contributors in all of those companies that we've benefited from helping us along the way. And I just think it would be rude not to mention companies like C&W Berry that just turned around a request for MDF over in Leyland, or RS Components, who source difficult materials without question. No, it wasn't about any immediate reward, but just doing the right things to support us. And Hillcrest Engineering, just to name 3 that turned around very quickly, machined parts. And so there's a range of skills in those organisations, but also those the way those companies have then just stepped up immediately to support the consortium. Somehow we've got to find a way to say a huge thank you to all of them on behalf of the nation and the NHS too. Absolutely,
yeah, and we're running rapidly out of time, unfortunately. But I think the point that everybody there has made is this has been a terrible time for not just the UK but the world. But the way the manufacturing sector in particular has pulled together has been inspiring, and if we can get that message out there to the wider public, then maybe people will start realizing the good work that manufacturing does in this country. And we still do make stuff over here, we and high quality stuff that, as you guys have proved, can be turned around in no time at all. Just to kind of further Stephen's point really about celebrating the work that companies have done in this time is probably worth plugging something that we've launched earlier this week. Just while I've got a couple of minutes left, we are part of the Mark Allen Group, which is the largest engineering and manufacturing publisher in the country. We've got over 20 magazines, events, various other bits and bobs that cover all aspects of manufacturing and engineering. And we've launched a new initiative called Engineering Heroes, engineeringheroes.co.uk. It's designed as a kind of repository, I suppose, of good news, of whether that's, you know, Airbuses and the Siemens of this world, or SMEs like AE Aerospace, just the work that they've done, and the good news that is out there, because often we can get bogged down in the kind of miserable news that's around at the moment. So I'd encourage everyone. Make UK and Siemens are already supporters of it. We're looking for supporters. It's free to sign up. It's just a logo and on the website. Similarly, if there's any good news stories, then we'll give them some coverage as well. But that's a new initiative that we've launched, and we're going to look to develop it through the end of this year, really, with supplements and potentially, you know, awards and events and things like that, just to give a little bit back, like you said, Stephen, giving something back to recognise the hard work that the industry has done.
Very good.
Right, I think we've unfortunately run out of time. This has been a really interesting conversation. I hope everyone who's watched it has also found it equally interesting and also inspiring. I think, you know, the work that the three of you and your companies have done, and indeed the support that Make UK have given, and the wider consortium and the wider industry, really shows the kind of excellence that is in manufacturing in this country. And hopefully it's you know, this kind of goodwill amongst various companies will continue, and I actively encourage anyone who's watched this to kind of consider that going forward. So thank you all once again for your time, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.